Rise, Tarnished. It's time for you to become champion of the lands between. Time to become the master of the Elden Ring. In this video, we'll cover everything you need to know to start your adventure off on the right foot through the lands between. This video will be especially useful if you are brand new to Elden Ring or Souls games in general. I won't be showing any boss fights or important story scenes, so you don't have to worry at all about any spoilers. And even if you've played Elden Ring before, you might stumble upon something new here, especially when we get to tip number 10. My name is Azzavhar or Azza, now let's get into it. First of all, you'll be tasked with choosing your starting class. When you get to mid-game and late game, your starting class won't really matter too much, as you'll end up configuring it to your liking as you play through. But in the early game, you will feel the effects of your starting class choice. The starting classes generally play how they look in their picture. For example, the Astrologer is a mage class and fights using magic bolts and magic beams, but they're quite squishy as they wear light armor. Vagabonds start with a sword, shield, good armor, and a decent amount of hit points. That class is quite tanky, so you can survive long enough in a fight to figure out what's going on, so on and so forth. You get the idea. Later on in the game, you'll get an item called a larval tier that you can use to completely reallocate your stat points anyway, so just pick the starting class that you vibe with. Sites of Grace. At these sites, you'll be able to rest, respawn, and fast travel too. When you rest, your red and blue flask uses will be restored, as well as your health, which is the red bar, and your focus points, which is the blue bar. Just be aware that enemies will respawn each and every time that you rest. Keep your eyes peeled whilst you're on your travels for the golden glow that shines from these sites. Make sure to claim each and every site of grace that you see, as you'll be fast traveling to them a lot. You can do a bunch of useful things at them, such as level up, upgrade your flasks, set spells, allocate your flask uses, and more. However, you won't be able to level up straight away. You'll need to meet Melina at the Gatefront Ruins site of Grace first, which brings us onto our next point, Torrent the Spectral Steed. You'll want to unlock Torrent as early as you can, as it makes traversing the lands between a heck of a lot easier. So to unlock Torrent, speak to Melina at the Gatefront Ruins site of Grace, located here on the map. Agree to have her as your maiden, and she'll give you the Spectral Steed whistle, which you can then use to summon Torrent. Put the whistle on your quick items or your pouch for easy access, since you'll be using it a lot. To assign an item to your pouch, first press the start button or your platform equivalent to bring up the menu. The pouch is found in the top right corner of this menu screen. From here, assign your whistle to a D-pad slot, and then to use an item that's assigned to a pouch slot, first make sure your menu is closed, and then you hold down Y if you're on Xbox or hold down triangle if you're on PlayStation, and then press the relevant D-pad direction. To set an item to a quick item slot, you'd set it up in the equipment section of the menu here. And then to use a quick item, you just have it selected in this bottom left hand section, and press X if you're on Xbox or square if you're on PlayStation. Next, you'll want to grab the Spirit Calling Bell and the Lone Wolf Ashes from the NPC Renna. These will come in insanely useful. Renna will be at the Church of Ella in Limgrave after you get the ability to summon your Spectral Steed from Melina. You'll find Renna sitting by the ruins at night time. If you don't get the Spirit Calling Bell from Renna, she will eventually stop appearing at the Church of Ella, but don't worry, if this happens, you can still buy the bell as well as the Lone Wolf Ashes from the Twin Maiden Husks in the Roundtable Hold. More on the Roundtable Hold in just a minute. This bell allows you to summon various spirits from Ashen Remains. It usually requires FP to use. FP is your blue bar and it stands for focus points. Spirits can only be summoned when you're near a rebirth monument, which is one of these things. When you're able to summon, you'll see a monument icon on the left hand side of the screen. You can only summon one spirit at a time and only summon once per player death or once per site of grace rested. And make sure to grab the item crafting kit from Merchant Carle, also known as Santa, whilst you're visiting the Church of Ella. You'll be able to craft a bunch of useful consumable items that can really turn the tables in your favour, such as food that can temporarily increase your attack or defense, or fire grease that you can apply to your weapon so that you can burn your enemies to the ground. Collect cookbooks, which are essentially recipes for new craftable items to permanently unlock that item's recipe for that character. You'll want to collect as many cookbooks as possible. So now you've been adventuring for a while, you've got into the flow, and you're no longer maidenless. Excellent, so far so good. Generally, you'll want to explore the large open world as it's filled to the brim with quests, secrets, and interesting characters. As you take your time to see what you can find and discover more sites of grace, you will eventually get a second visit from Melina. This second visit will happen at an open world site of grace, and it'll give you access to the Roundtable Hold. Common sites of grace that trigger this to happen are the lake facing cliffs in Liurnia of the Lakes, or the Smouldering Church in Caelid. The Roundtable Hold acts as a hub for NPCs where you can access various services, barter with merchants, upgrade weapons and spirit ashes, chat with the NPCs to discover some of the weird and wonderful things that they're up to, and even lend them a helping hand if you feel up to the task. Speaking of the Roundtable Hold, you'll also want to unlock Spirit Tuning. Roderika is a spirit tuner that you'll encounter at Stormhill's shack on the trail to Stormvale. She'll later move to the Roundtable Hold if you progress her quest. Essentially, this NPC will allow you to upgrade your spirit ashes. It'll cost you runes plus grave gloveworts or ghost gloveworts depending on the type of spirit ash. Having stronger spirit ashes can really help turn the tide of battle in your favor. I do have a video on how to complete Roderika's quest. I'll link that in the video description. You'll want to get your hands on the Flask of Wondrous Physick as early as possible, as this thing can be the difference between life and death if you're in a pinch. The Flask of Wondrous Physick is a consumable item that can be customized using crystal tears to produce significant effects, but it's only usable once per rest. You can find it in the Third Church of Marika in Limgrave, lying on the ground next to the Site of Grace, located here on the map. You can put up to 2 crystal tears into the flask to gain the temporary benefits of those crystal tears when you take a drink. Some examples of those crystal tears are the Crimson Burst crystal tear, which heals your HP over time, and the Cerulean Hidden tear, which eliminates all FP costs for a short time. So on and so forth. You can see how the flask and the crystal tears can be useful. You'll generally find the crystal tears at the bases of minor Erd trees, so look out for these symbols on the map. To mix the crystals in the flask, you'll have to do that at a Site of Grace. Many enemies in Elden Ring are much stronger than you, so it can be helpful to try and sneak past them and avoid them completely, or take them out using stealth attacks. Push the left thumbstick in to crouch down and put yourself into stealth mode. You can stab an enemy in the back to deal a huge chunk of damage, which will sometimes delete them in just one attack. Keep your eyes open for bushes as you can crouch in them and hide yourself inside. And remember, when low on health, go stealth. Every attack that hits an enemy deals a certain amount of stance damage. The game doesn't show us how much stance damage we're actually doing, but imagine there's a bar that is building up with every attack that you land on the enemy. And when that bar fills, the enemy becomes stance broken. It's kind of like this poison build-up bar. When it reaches the top, it inflicts poison, but the one that we're talking about causes a stance break. This usually makes the enemy fall down or fall to their knees, making them vulnerable to a critical hit. Sometimes this is displayed by a golden glowing aura that appears at a spot on their bodies, at which point you should head over to that and press your light attack button, which is RB on Xbox or R1 on PlayStation. Fully charged heavy attacks and guard counters deal the most stance damage. A fully charged heavy attack would be holding down RT if you're on Xbox or holding down R2 if you're on PlayStation. To perform a guard counter, you'll have to equip a shield and then hold down block using LB or L1. After blocking the enemy's attack, you would then press your heavy attack button, which is RT or R2, which will then perform the guard counter. You'll know if it's worked because the game will play you a unique sound. Jumping heavy attacks deal a very large amount of stance damage, standing uncharged heavy attacks deal a large amount of stance damage, and light attacks, which generally would be RB or R1, deal the least amount of stance damage. So just keep this in mind when you're fighting for your life. Remember that invisible stance bar, because stance breaking an enemy might be the difference between a victory and a loss. Make sure to look out for these icons on your map, as you'll find a map fragment lying against one of these posts like this. You'll need map fragments to fully complete your map of the lands between. You can wield a weapon with two hands by holding down Y if you're on Xbox or triangle if you're on PlayStation and then pressing your attack button. There are a variety of reasons to wield a weapon with both hands, but the simplest reason is that it increases the damage output of your attacks. It can also change up the moveset of the weapon that you're using, so if the weapon normally swings horizontally, you might find that two-handing it makes it swing vertically, which could be useful in tight corridors so your weapon doesn't keep hitting the walls. Wielding a weapon with two hands can also make it more stable. For example, if you hit certain enemies using just one hand, the weapon might bounce off, but if you hold it with two hands, your attacks will slice right through. In addition, whilst two-handing a weapon, it multiplies your strength stat by 1.5, meaning that the strength requirement to use that weapon effectively could potentially be met even if you don't have enough strength. For example, we have 24 strength, and this weapon requires 25 strength to use effectively. So when wielding this weapon with one hand, it shows a red cross, which means we won't do much damage when attacking like this. But if we hold it with two hands, it increases our strength by 50%, which takes our strength up to 36, which now takes away the red cross and allows us to deal much more damage with it. This 1.5 multiplier only works with strength. Just keep in mind that obviously if you're holding a weapon with two hands, that there might be some downsides. For example, you won't be able to block attacks using a shield. If you're defeated in battle, don't get discouraged. Take a moment to analyze what went wrong and try to do things differently next time. On that same note, remember to take breaks. Elden Ring can be a challenging game, and it's important to take some time out and pace yourself to avoid frustration. Our brains are designed to overcome problems and issues, so I usually find that by taking some time to stop and think about the challenges that I'm facing allows that light bulb moment to happen. It's worth mentioning that I do have hundreds of Elden Ring videos up on this channel, everything from boss guides to dungeon walkthroughs. If you want to continue your video game training, then check out one of these videos right here.